Bitcoin's price is about to make a giant move. It could be to the downside, but I suspect it's going to be to the upside. And in this video, I'm going to explain why. So without a further ado, I'm going to show this year's price for Bitcoin in terms of US dollars. This is year to date. This is from January 1st of 2023, all the way here to mid November here. And we can see that it's been continually higher highs, higher lows, a little low here. This is the Silicon Valley Bank crisis here in March of 2023. Then another new high, continued highs, a little fading out a little bit, a higher low here in June of 2023, a new high, more lows, and now here we are at year-to-date highs. Bitcoin is up over 119% this year to date. This is a massive price appreciation. And I remember back in late last year in 2022 and early this year in 2023, when I was telling people that time to buy Bitcoin in the teens, the 16, 18, 19, $20,000 range, that their time was very limited. I kept pounding the table on this. People kept telling me, no, Bitcoin's going to $10,000, going to $12,000, it's going lower. Bitcoin's going lower. And I told them, you could be right. Bitcoin could have easily gone below $16,000, $15,000 or so. It easily could have hit $10,000 if we had a major banking crisis, if we had a liquidity crisis, if another exchange, in addition to FTX, had gone down. We easily could have gone down to those lower levels. However, at that point, I said again and again and again, I do not believe it is a more likely scenario. I think we are going to go up. And since then, like I said, we have gone up continually exponentially. I posted my first Twitter thread on January 17th of 2023, and since then, Bitcoin is up over 72.5%. Okay. And now, if we're going to zoom out even farther to the last 5 years, we can see that the majority of time Bitcoin has spent below these current levels. It has spent most of its time below this current $36,500 level. There were some times where it was in the 40s, 50s, and 60s of thousands of dollars, but Bitcoin is very close to all-time highs, over recovering half of the losses incurred in the previous bear market here. Okay. If we look back here to where Bitcoin was roughly at these levels in April and May of 2022, you would have still the same amount of money, even if you went all in there. And in fact, every single person that started dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin from the very peak is now in profit, because even though they have many buys here in this range higher than current price points for Bitcoin, there are far more buys they made in this lower range that are now in profit. So the point is that it's not timing Bitcoin that matters. It's not timing Bitcoin that is important. It is the time you are saving in Bitcoin that's important. In the same way that with traditional fiat finance and saving in assets and real estate and stocks, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market that's important. It's the same thing with Bitcoin here. It does not matter how well you time Bitcoin. It is incredibly important that you're in Bitcoin for as long as possible and that you are not in the sidelines. I know a lot of you watching this are in the sidelines. You have massive cash positions on the sidelines. A lot of you I know have 10%, 20%, 50, even 80% plus. Some of you, you're still in 100% cash. Please, I am begging you to consider beginning allocating to Bitcoin if you've not done so already, because you cannot predict when we're going to have massive green days here. Okay, notice again, 120% year to date. But if you simply miss the first 2 weeks of Bitcoin's appreciation, you've gone from a 120% return only to a 75% return. Now, a 75% return, especially in this market, is not bad. It definitely is not bad, but it's definitely not 120%. And see, this is what people don't realize when it comes to Bitcoin. The vast majority of green candle gates, the vast majority of returns happen incredibly fast. And then we have slow, drawn out bear markets. And we can see that in Bitcoin's price history here, even if we go out farther into the past. If we go out farther into the past, we can see that there were massive spikes. You can look here in late 2020 here. You can look here in the recovery from the lockdown and COVID crash. You can look here in 2019. There are periods of rapid price appreciation and then long drawn out periods of sideways accumulation and distribution. And then again, even on the shorter timeline, we can see it again, rapid periods of price appreciation and then long multi-month periods of sideways actions. Rapid week-long periods of price appreciation, then long drawn out sideways action. And this is what it's been continually for a very, very long period of time. And so far we've been looking in a linear scale, but I really think in order to get a better idea of what we're talking about, we have to begin looking at Bitcoin on a logarithmic scale. This is not something that's new for today in the tens of thousands of dollars. This has been around since Bitcoin's very beginning here. So I'm going to pull up a chart from a friend of mine entitled Wicked Smart Bitcoin, pseudonymous Bitcoin expert. And he shows Bitcoin going from 1 cent here in 2009, 2010 or so, all the way up to a theoretical $1 trillion Bitcoin. And he gets this from a hyperbolic model. Now, obviously, this is not a price prediction of $1 trillion Bitcoin at any specific timeline. Notice how here at the bottom right, the timeline stops in 2022. And then from there, there's no label because we simply don't know when this is going to occur. However, it is very likely that at some point in the future, fiat currencies will continue to degrade, and the exchange rate of Bitcoin in terms of political currency units will just break to the upside exponentially on a hyperbolic function. So let's look at past price history on this chart here. On the left, we have logarithmic scale, and on the right, we have linear scale. Notice how we have periods of rapid appreciation and then years of sideways action, and then more rapid periods of appreciation again and again, and years of sideways action. This happens again and again and again, especially on the linear scale. There was another one, the 2017, 2019, and 2021 bull markets. And now here we are. This is where we are today. Okay, this is, whoops, if I can back up a little bit. Okay, this is where we are today. Now, this model here is outdated by roughly 6 months. Again, you can see with Bitcoin here on the left on that linear scale, how it's roughly, let's see, probably about a year outdated. This was the very bottom of the market. Again, when people were still calling for 50, 60, 70% price crashes from where we were in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. Now, look at this curve here. What do you notice on the linear chart on the left? Okay, what you see is that if Bitcoin continues to follow this hyperbolic curve, that we should expect at some point in the next couple of years, there is going to be a period of rapid price appreciation. How high? I have no idea. Maybe $100,000 per Bitcoin, maybe $300,000 per Bitcoin, maybe $1 million per Bitcoin. Obviously, 100,000 is more likely than 400,000, 400 is more likely than a million, but eventually at some point, that's going to happen. And the longer at which it takes for us to get there, the farther out that curve is going to appreciate ahead of us, and therefore probably the more explosive that action is going to be. And considering that this current bear market for Bitcoin here in 2022 and 2023 has been the longest bear market in Bitcoin's history, I think it's entirely possible we could be looking at rapid price appreciations for Bitcoin sooner than we may expect. Now, sooner is relative. If you're looking to get rich quick in 6 months or 6 weeks, this is not the savings vehicle for you. Go trade on some degenerate other thing in the world. Bitcoin is long-term savings. It's long-term holding. There's never been a 4-year period in Bitcoin's history at which it has been lower than 4 years prior to the day. So again, if we look at this chart here of Bitcoin's history, we can see, again, this is about 6 to 12 months outdated, that the curve, the white line, the hyperbolic function is growing faster than what we have been right now. And so it's my guess probably that at some point Bitcoin will have a massive skyrocketing upwards event, and then there will be a huge crash, years more of sideways action, and this will continue. And in 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, or 25 years, whatever, at some point in the future that we cannot foresee yet, this is what Bitcoin's price will look like. On the left, on a linear scale, it will not matter if you bought Bitcoin at 15,000, at 30,000, 100,000, or $500,000 a coin. When we are pricing Bitcoin in terms of hundreds of millions of political currency units, both as a due to Bitcoin's appreciation, but also due to the debasement and destruction of political currency, it won't matter. It won't matter. Like if I were to talk to you today and show you this chart here, going back to that, if we were to go back to the early days of Bitcoin, when it was just a few dollars or just a few cents, would it matter if you bought Bitcoin at $3 or $8? Does it matter? Like, look at this. Does it matter if you bought Bitcoin at 50 cents, $3 or $4? Like any one of these buys is massively underappreciated. It's massively undervalued. Imagine all the people that sold Bitcoin at $34 because they thought it was going to zero, and all the people that bought at $3 and were scared or sold because they thought it was going lower below that. Like, it doesn't matter. If your time horizon is long enough, if you are buying Bitcoin for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, your current buy-in price does not matter at all. The longer your time horizon, the less current price matters. If you're trying to make a buck really quickly here and you're trying to sell in 6 months or a year or so, then yeah, probably the price you're buying at right now matters a lot. But I always encourage you to have a long time preference. Be saving Bitcoin, not for your expenses this next year, and definitely not for your expenses in less than a year. But you should be saving Bitcoin for your future, your long-term future, your kids, your grandkids, your future companies, your future descendants. You should be buying Bitcoin and saving it for as long as your time horizon can possibly allow, which therefore means the current price you buy at matters less and less. It does not matter if you buy Bitcoin at $1 or $10, at 30 grand or 40 grand a pop. any price is great. And likewise today, my encouragement is that if you're waiting on the sidelines with cash at $36,000 per Bitcoin, I think this is a really, really big mistake, especially if you are in Bitcoin for the long term, because people will not care in the future if you bought Bitcoin at 36,000 or at 36 or 32,000 or 24,000. They will care though if you had cash waiting at 36,000 and you saw Bitcoin double and double and double again. See, let's look. Where we go from here? Eventually, $100 becomes dwarfed, $1,000 becomes dwarfed, and then the same happens with 10,000. And then I think at some point the same will happen with 100,000. Eventually, 100,000 per Bitcoin will not be bullish; it will be bearish as we go out perpetually with increasing orders of magnitude, as we debase our currency more and more, as Bitcoin absorbs more productivity more and more, and we have more prosperity across the globe. It will continue just to become more valuable in terms of everything else. Now, where are we going from here specifically? I think that there's a reason to believe that we could be going to 70,000 per Bitcoin in the relative near future here. Now, the reason I say that is because roughly double where we are today is 72,000. Now, this is all-time highs. You know, this could be years away. This could be months away. I have no idea, but I do think the $70,000 level is going to be really critical because humans are emotional. And if we look back at the past cycle, we peaked in the high 60s, high $60,000 per US coin. And so crossing that level and getting into the $70,000 range is a massive psychological shift for people. In the same way that most people today are only viewing Bitcoin in tens of thousands of dollars per coin, they haven't ever heard of Bitcoin in the $1, $10, or $100 range. This is their unit bias today. In the same way, once we cross that unit bias into the $70,000 range, I think really quickly we will continue to hit all-time high after all-time high after all-time high in those periods of rapid appreciation here. And there's something important to note about that $70,000 level as well. See, if you're holding cash, waiting on the sidelines, I know lots of people here that in these months in late 2022 and early 2023 were holding very large cash positions because they just wanted Bitcoin to go a little bit lower. Unfortunately, you've lost half your purchasing power in the last year just from holding cash in terms of Bitcoin, okay? If you're waiting to try to time the bottom, I'm sorry, but it looks like you missed the bottom, okay? If you're trying to buy at $15,000 again, if you're trying to buy new all-time lows, it would require a 50% crash in Bitcoin's price from today at $36,000 in order for you to be able to do that. So let me ask you, if in the lockdowns of 2020, if when we shut down the world, Bitcoin did a 50% crash, because it did a 50% crash. However, that crash was recovered in a matter of weeks from the amount of money printing that had occurred, okay? If we look here, Bitcoin crashed from about $10,000 in February of 2020 all the way down 45, 46, 50% to $4,500 in mere weeks to March of 2020. But like I said, it only took weeks. So in my opinion, if you're holding cash on the sidelines, I don't know what you're waiting for, okay? Your best case scenario is that we have a COVID level size lockdown. We get a rapid 50% crash in Bitcoin down to where the lows were just a mere year ago at $15,000, $16,000. And probably in whatever event that is that occurs, we're probably going to print so much money that Bitcoin is just going to absorb those losses immediately again as we continue to debase those dollars. Okay. So really, do you want to be holding that much cash on the sidelines, hoping and waiting and praying and crossing your fingers that we get at least a 50% crash that maybe will only last days, if not weeks? Don't you think everyone else is also waiting for the same thing? Like, I think the far better risk-adjusted decision to make, I think the far better idea is to begin buying Bitcoin if you've not done so already. And if you are buying Bitcoin, but you're still holding on to a lot of cash, I don't think that's the right idea because we've already doubled from the lows. And if we double again, we're going to be hitting that $70,000 level where we will break that unit bias and we'll probably begin appreciating from there. So again, we've already doubled once from the lows to today. We're probably going to double again from today to the $70,000 range at some point in this next cycle. Now, what happens if we double again from there? Well, we get $144,000 per Bitcoin. And if we double again from there, that's $288,000 per Bitcoin. Do I think we'll hit that this cycle? I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. A lot of it depends on the ETF. A lot of it depends on what interest rates do. A lot of it depends on how much quantitative easing we have. But I do know that the pain you have of seeing that you could have bought at the bottom at $15,000, $16,000 and watching Bitcoin double in the last year will be dwarfed by the pain, theoretically, if Bitcoin hit those high price targets in 70,000, 80,000, 120,000, 288,000, wherever Bitcoin goes. I think it's far more likely that we hit those high price numbers than going back down another 50% sustained in the low teens. Okay. And so yes, Bitcoin could easily go lower in the future, but I think it's far more likely that it goes higher. And so it's not only important that you begin buying Bitcoin and having your Bitcoin exposure increase as a function of time, but it's also increasingly important, in my opinion, that you also get your self-custody down. Okay. As people have higher and higher demand for Bitcoin, as more ETFs get approved, as there's more attention drawn into Bitcoin and more people buy Bitcoin and serious investments, serious allocations of companies and high net worth individuals, it's increasingly important that you get your self-custody figured out ASAP. Do not wait for Coinbase to go down. Do not wait for exchanges to rehypothecate your coins, yield out your coins, and lose your coins. You should take self-custody immediately. If you don't know how to do that, if you want a multi-sig plan for you, for your kids, for your future, for an estate plan, I do work at the Bitcoin Advisor. Obviously, I'm biased to promote self-custody for that reason. However, I do not believe it's only in my best interest. I also believe it is in your best interest that you begin taking self-custody immediately. And I do think single sig is a great way for you to do that. And I also believe multi-sig is a great way to do that. If you want to learn more about multi-sig and collateral custody, simply click on the link in the description for the Bitcoin Advisor. I will send you dozens of pages about the Bitcoin Advisor specifically and helpful educational info about collateral custody and multi-sig solutions for you in general. You can book a meeting with me where you can talk to me for free and where you can email me, contact me, and get access to my calendar there. So whatever the case, whether you're buying a lot of Bitcoin, a little Bitcoin, a high percentage, a low percentage, my message to you is Bitcoin is probably going to go down, but it's probably more likely it's going to go up. And so the question is, what is your time horizon? The longer your time horizon, the more sense it makes just to smash buy and just to wait. Even if you smash buy today, $36,000, and we do have that massive crash, 50% from some sort of macro event that lasts a few weeks or maybe in a few months, will it matter in a year? Will it matter in 5 years? Will people think that you were an idiot for buying Bitcoin at $3.6 when then it crashed to $2.2 or $2.5 when then it's gone up by a factor of 100 or 1,000 since then? It's the same thing here today. Will people care when Bitcoin is 10 million or $100 million a coin? Will people care if you bought Bitcoin at 36 or 32 or 39 or 24 or 15 or $45,000? Will they care? No, they won't. But it will be really, really embarrassing for you if your story is, yeah, I found Bitcoin at $5, but I just held a bunch of cash because I thought it was too expensive. That is the embarrassing story. Do not be that person. If you're going to start saving in Bitcoin, start saving in Bitcoin as soon as possible, as much as you can. Stay humble. Don't get over leveraged. Don't rehypothecate your Bitcoin. Take self-custody, multi-sig, single sig, whatever. You can find me in the description. My point is, please do not hold political currency on the sidelines unless you are really confident that you know what you're doing. And I suspect most people that are really confident knowing what they're doing are still making the wrong choice.